Tokyo, 1985. The city glows, neon signs advertising Sony, Panasonic, Mitsubishi, streets packed with brand new cars, not American cars, Japanese cars, Honda, Toyota, Nissan. Everywhere you look, there is wealth. Construction cranes, building skyscrapers, department stores selling luxury goods, the Tokyo Stock Exchange setting record highs every week. And then, across the Pacific Ocean in New York City, something changes hands. Rockefeller Center, the iconic Manhattan landmark, an American symbol, purchased by Mitsubishi Estate for $1.4 billion. The Japanese are buying America, and Americans are terrified. In the 1980s, there was a statistic that circulated in financial circles. A statistic so absurd it sounded like propaganda, but it was true. The land underneath the Tokyo Imperial Palace, the emperor's residence, was theoretically worth more than the entire state of California. Not the buildings, just the land. One palace grounds in Tokyo was valued higher than all of California's real estate combined. Japan was not just rich, Japan was unstoppable. And the United States was losing the trade war, losing the technology race, losing the economic dominance it had held since World War II. American factories were closing, American workers were losing their jobs to Japanese competition, and American politicians were panicking. So, on September 22nd, 1985, in a hotel room in New York, 5 nations gathered, and with a single piece of paper, the United States ended Japan's economic rise. Not with bombs, not with sanctions, with currency manipulation. They called it the Plaza Accord. And it was the beginning of Japan's 30-year economic coma. This is not ancient history. This is a blueprint, a template for how superpowers destroy rivals without firing a shot. And if you understand what happened to Japan, you will understand what is happening right now between the United States and China. Let me take you back to the beginning to understand why Japan had to be stopped. After World War II, Japan was in ruins, cities bombed, infrastructure destroyed, economy shattered. But the United States, occupying Japan, rebuilt it, deliberately, strategically. Japan became a bulwark against communism in Asia, a manufacturing hub, a stable ally. And under American protection, Japan focused entirely on economic growth. No military spending, no defense budget draining resources, just production, efficiency, innovation, and it worked. By the 1960s, Japan was exporting electronics. By the 1970s, it was exporting cars. By the 1980s, it was exporting everything. And it was beating American companies at their own game. Detroit, the heart of American manufacturing, was collapsing. General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, all losing market share to Honda, Toyota, and Nissan. Japanese cars were cheaper, more fuel efficient, and more reliable. American auto workers were being laid off by the tens of thousands. Factories were shutting down. Entire cities were falling into economic depression. And it was not just cars. Consumer electronics, semiconductors, cameras, televisions, stereos. Every category where America had once dominated, Japan was now winning. Sony Walkmans were everywhere. Nintendo was reshaping the gaming industry. Japanese companies were buying American real estate, American companies, American cultural landmarks. The fear in the United States was existential. Japan was going to eclipse America economically. And if Japan became the world's largest economy, American geopolitical power would erode. The post-war order, built on American financial dominance, would collapse. So Washington acted, not with tariffs alone, not with quotas. Those were band-aids. Washington needed a structural solution, a way to cripple Japan's export machine permanently. And the weapon they chose was the exchange rate. September 22nd, 1985, the Plaza Hotel in New York City, finance ministers and central bank governors from the G5 nations gather. The United States, Japan, West Germany, France, the United Kingdom. They are there to sign an agreement that will, on paper, stabilize global currency imbalances. The official story is that the US dollar is overvalued. American exports are suffering because the dollar is too strong. Foreign goods are flooding into America because the dollar buys so much. So the solution, according to the Plaza Accord, is coordinated intervention. The G5 nations will work together to depreciate the dollar and appreciate other currencies, especially the Japanese yen and the German Deutsche Mark. This sounds technical, it sounds cooperative, it sounds like responsible economic management. But what it actually is a calculated hit on Japan's economy. Here is how the mechanism works. And this is critical to understand. When the yen appreciates against the dollar, Japanese exports become more expensive for American buyers. Let us say a Toyota Corolla costs 1 million yen to produce. In 1985, before the Plaza Accord, the exchange rate is about 240 yen to $1, so that Corolla costs about $4,167 in America. Now, after the Plaza Accord, the United States and its allies intervene in currency markets. They sell dollars and buy yen. This drives up demand for yen. The yen appreciates. Within 2 years, the exchange rate moves to 120 yen per dollar. Now, that same 1 million yen Corolla costs $8,333 in America. The price has doubled, not because Toyota raised prices, not because production costs increased, but because the currency moved. Japanese exports are now twice as expensive. American consumers stop buying them, Japanese companies lose sales, profits collapse, and the entire export-driven Japanese economy begins to hemorrhage. Japan has no choice but to sign the Plaza Accord. Because Japan is militarily dependent on the United States, Japan does not have its own independent defense. It relies on the U.S. military umbrella for protection. If Japan refuses to cooperate on currency policy, the United States can threaten to withdraw that protection. This is not stated explicitly. It does not need to be. Everyone in that room understands the leverage, so Japan signs, and the yen begins to rise, and Japanese exporters begin to suffer, and the Japanese government panics, because if exports collapse, the economy collapses. Japan's entire growth model is built on selling goods to the rest of the world. If that engine dies, unemployment will spike, companies will fail, the political consequences will be catastrophic. So the Japanese government does what central banks always do when faced with an economic crisis. They try to stimulate the domestic economy. They cut interest rates aggressively. The Bank of Japan drives rates down to historic lows. The logic is simple. If we cannot export, we need domestic demand. We need people to spend money inside Japan. And if we make borrowing cheap, people will borrow and spend, and they do. But not on consumer goods. They borrow to speculate. On stocks, on real estate. Because when money is cheap, people do not just spend it, they invest it. And when everyone is investing at the same time, prices go up. And when prices go up, more people invest because they see prices rising. This is the feedback loop that creates a bubble. Between 1985 and 1989, Japanese asset prices explode. The Nikkei stock index more than doubles. Real estate prices in Tokyo skyrocket. Companies borrow billions to buy land. Individuals take out mortgages that will take 100 years to repay. Banks lend recklessly because land prices only go up. Everyone believes the boom will last forever. Golf club memberships are selling for millions of dollars. A single square meter of land in central Tokyo costs more than an entire house in most American cities. The Bank of Japan, worried about overheating, starts to raise interest rates again in 1989. Just a little, just to cool things down. And the bubble bursts. Immediately, violently. The Nikkei peaks in December 1989 at 38,915. By October 1990, it has fallen to 20,221, a 48% collapse in 10 months. Real estate prices begin to fall, and they do not stop falling for decades. By 2003, Japanese real estate has lost 70% of its peak value. Trillions of dollars in wealth gone. Banks that lent against inflated real estate values are suddenly holding worthless collateral. Borrowers default, banks fail, the government bails them out, but the damage is done. Consumer confidence is destroyed. People stop spending. Companies stop hiring. Deflation sets in. Prices fall. And when prices are falling, people delay purchases, waiting for even lower prices. This creates a deflationary spiral that Japan still has not fully escaped. From 1991 to 2010, Japan's economy barely grows. They call this period the lost decades. 2 full decades of stagnation. The generation that came of age during the bubble sees their career prospects vanish. Lifetime employment, the cornerstone of Japanese corporate culture, disappears. Young people stop getting married, stop having children because they cannot afford it. The demographic crisis begins, and all of this traces back to one moment. September 22nd, 1985. The Plaza Accord. The day the United States forced Japan to make its currency more expensive, killed its export engine, and triggered the chain of events that led to the bubble and the collapse. Now, some economists will argue that Japan's bubble was Japan's fault, that the Bank of Japan mismanaged monetary policy, that Japanese banks were reckless. And there is truth to that. But the initial shock, the thing that set the entire disaster in motion, was the forced appreciation of the yen. Japan did not choose that. It was imposed. This is economic warfare. And it is more effective than military warfare because it leaves no visible wreckage, no bombed out cities, no casualties on the battlefield, just a slow, grinding decline in living standards that can be blamed on market forces or poor policy choices. The victim is blamed for the crime. And the United States learned from this because the same playbook is being used today against China. For the past 20 years, the United States has pressured China to let the yuan appreciate, to stop artificially keeping its currency cheap. American politicians and economists say that China is cheating, that it manipulates its currency to make Chinese exports unfairly cheap, that if China let the yuan rise to its natural level, American manufacturers could compete. But China studied Japan. China saw what happened when a rising economic power agreed to currency appreciation under American pressure. China saw the Plaza Accord. China saw the bubble. China saw the lost decades. And China said no. China keeps strict capital controls. It does not allow its currency to be freely traded. It intervenes in currency markets to keep the yuan from appreciating too fast. And when the United States demands that China sign a Plaza Accord-style agreement, China refuses, because China knows that agreement would be a trap, just like it was for Japan. This is why the US-China relationship is so tense. It is not just about trade deficits or intellectual property. It is about whether China will accept a subordinate role in the global economy. And China, unlike Japan in 1985, is not militarily dependent on the United States. China has nuclear weapons. China has its own military. China does not need American protection. So China has leverage that Japan never had. The lesson here is simple. Currency is a weapon. And in the modern world, exchange rates are more powerful than aircraft carriers because you can destroy a nation's economy without ever deploying a soldier. You can impoverish millions without firing a shot. You can do it all while maintaining the appearance of cooperation and mutual benefit. Japan learned this the hard way. They went from economic superpower to stagnation in less than a decade. And it was not because they made inferior products. It was not because they lost their technological edge. It was because the United States, facing an economic rival, used financial tools to eliminate the threat. And here's the thing that should terrify you. If this can be done to Japan, a close American ally, it can be done to anyone. If your economy depends on exports, your currency is a vulnerability. If your central bank does not have the strength to resist foreign pressure, you are at the mercy of larger powers. And if you sign an agreement that forces you to appreciate your currency, you're signing your own economic death warrant. The Plaza Accord was not a treaty. It was an execution. And the executioners were not soldiers. They were finance ministers with pens. And the weapon was not a bomb. It was an exchange rate. So the next time someone tells you that economics and war are separate things, remember Japan. Remember the Plaza Hotel. Remember the lost decades. Because in the modern world, the battlefield is not in the desert or the jungle. It is in the foreign exchange markets. And the casualties are not counted in bodies. They are counted in lost decades, shuttered factories, and generations that never got the future they were promised. Here is what I want you to do. Go to the comments right now. Do you think manipulating another country's currency is an act of war? Or is it just economics? Write one word. War. Or economics. Let me know what you think. And if this video changed how you see the 1980s and Japan's collapse, share it with someone who still thinks the Plaza Accord was about stabilizing exchange rates.